Many kids love going to summer camp. You bet, new friends, fun and fresh air. But I want to tell you a not very funny story that happened to my sister and me when we were kids. One day I was 13 years old and my sister was 12. Our parents sent us to a children's camp that was not very far from our house, about 2 hours away. My sister's name was Amanda and I liked it very much. Lots of fun, lots of kids, and most importantly, there was a forest nearby, with a large and clean lake for swimming. You can't think of anything better. In the first days we found a company of 3 guys and 2 girls. We started to eat together at the same table, in general, to spend all the rest of the time. On the first day, my sister came up to me, "Listen, have you noticed anything strange in the behavior of the camp staff?" To which I replied, "No, I don't think so, people are just like people." "Why do you ask?" She got a little embarrassed and continued, "They get nervous when it starts to get dark, they send you to the cabins early, even though the time is actually 9, not 11. At night I've heard shuffling footsteps and crying outside the window, but I've been afraid to look inside." I thought for a moment and replied, "Come on, they just don't want anything to happen to the kids, that's why they come in early. And about the footsteps, that's probably the guard going around. You probably wanted to sleep, that's why you heard those noises." My sister hesitated for a moment, then nodded affirmatively, agreeing with what I said. I felt uneasy about her suspicions, but I quickly put them out of my mind, and we went outside. The day passed quietly. We went to the lake, the counselor gave us a tour and gave us time to swim in the lake as much as we wanted, but no later than 6 in the evening. As we swam past the reeds, I noticed someone was there, but I couldn't see who. I wanted to get a better look at the figure, but the counselor called out to me, and I swam to shore. I approached her and told her about the strange silhouette. She was pleased, but tried not to show it, saying that I must have a hot head and was imagining things. As I followed everyone, my thoughts kept coming back to what I had seen. I knew that what I had seen was real, but who it was and what it was, I never could figure out. We spent the rest of the time near the cabins, and about 9 o'clock in the evening the counselors sent us to our rooms. Lying in bed, I listened to the sounds outside the window. The night was quiet and peaceful, as suddenly this silence was interrupted by a sharp shout from the second cabin of the younger group. I froze and was afraid to move. My sister was also awake and looked at me. Suddenly a shot rang out from the counselor's cabin. Then distant footsteps were heard. Some of them were crying, and we could hear it from the open window. After a while it got quiet, and I decided to look out the window. Later I regretted it. On the grass, in the lantern light, I saw a pool of blood and part of someone's hand. I quickly ran away from the window and climbed into bed. I was shaking with the realization of what I had just seen. I fell asleep from fear and emotion without knowing when. This morning it seemed like a dream to me. And this morning, when I didn't see one of the girls, I tensed up. Then I decided it was a coincidence. The day passed like a blur, but my sister was strangely cheerful, and everything that happened during the night seemed like a dream too. Well, that's even better. That girl never showed up. The counselor of her group was sad. I wanted to know what had happened, so I decided to find out what had happened. After turning off the lights, I quietly walked out of the house and approached the counselor's dormitory. What I heard threw me into a state of fear and shock, and made me quickly run into my room. This is what they were saying: "I can't take it anymore. She's killed 5 kids and a counselor this season. And it's still only the middle of summer and the camp needs to close. When the parents arrive and can't find the kids, it will be a disaster." The woman was horrified. Then our counselor said, "Chris is right. We need to call the parents immediately to pick up the kids and leave. Yesterday one of my charges saw something in the water. It must have been that little critter. Apparently she went after it but ran into another girl. Now we're all in danger. Monica, think of the children and of us. It never came during the day before, but now it's even at this time of day. It's good that that girl is back on shore. The manager replied, we can't close it down, it's profitable, the children like it here, we just have to keep a better eye on them. And the girl should be watched too, and it is better to lock her in the cabin at night, then everything will be fine. The councillors began to argue and become indignant. I had the impression that she was not interested in the fate of the children, although her own children were vacationing here. I did not hear the continuation of the conversation and, gathering all my strength, ran to my room. But what happened earlier still haunts me to this day. I'd been there before, and the place haunted me still. As I locked the door and all the windows, I heard a screech and froze, sinking to the floor. My sister opened her eyes and wanted to say something, but upon hearing the sound, she too fell silent. The creature was scratching at the door and whispering in an ominous childlike voice, "Hey, let me in, I'm cold, my feet are cold, my hands are cold, let me in." The voice was creepy, dialectal, but then it went quiet. My sister and I sat closer together and hugged. I didn't want to scare her with what I'd heard. I wanted to go home as soon as possible. That night we couldn't sleep. We came to morning formation sleepy. The councillor asked what was wrong with us, but we didn't tell her the truth. She sighed and went about her business. All day I was worried, Amanda was too. But further events made me realize that it was time to leave this place. Our friends invited us to their cabin for the night. We agreed, but the councillor strictly forbade us to leave our friend's cabin at night, to which we nodded our heads approvingly. We got ready around 9:30. All the girls had prepared sweets and scary stories. One girl told about a headless horseman who rides around town on Halloween night looking for his head. Another about a ghostly cobbler who had his hand chopped off while he was making another pair of boots. But exactly how it happened, no one knows. These stories were good, but the third girl's story gave me goosebumps. She said she had a story about our camp. My sister and I looked at each other and listened. Many years ago there was a kindergarten here where something terrible happened. People broke into the building and started looking for children, but they found only one girl sleeping in a crib that her mom hadn't had time to pick up. They took the girl to the lake, cut off her hair and tied her up so she couldn't swim out. They threw her into the water and left her to drown. Since then, rumor has it that she walks around and will brutally destroy whoever she catches. It's her revenge, although those people have long since been found and put away. The story has been all over the news. We talked some more and then went to bed. I couldn't get this terrible story out of my head. I was scared. And then there was that conversation with the councillor. All these thoughts filled my head and made me shiver. If it was true, I was in danger. I kept listening to every sound from the street. Suddenly there was a knock on the door of my sister's and my cabin. It was as loud as if someone was trying to kick it in. And again that voice, "Let me in, let me in." My throat was dry. I prayed she wasn't looking for me. I didn't want to repeat the fate of the girl from the other cabin. My friends and sister were already asleep. I quietly got out of bed, walked over to the window and closed it. I took a fleeting glance at what stood outside the window. It was a girl about 5 years old, dirty, wet, with short hair and huge claws. I ducked down and shuddered even more. It was a good thing I closed the curtains in time so she wouldn't see me, because she was already wandering near the cabin we were in now. She was sniffing and growling strangely. I knocked on the door and said, "I'll be back, girl, and we'll swim together again." Then, just like last time, there was silence. Sitting under the window and crying, I thought about leaving this place. In the morning I called my mom and asked her to pick up my sister and me. She didn't ask too many questions and said that Grandpa would pick us up. We left there the same day. And later we learned from one of the girls from the camp, with whom we talked on the phone, that a terrible thing had happened in that cabin. The night after we left, someone kicked in the door to our cabin and killed everyone except that friend who had stayed at the cabin as a counselor helping her with recordings. After stories like that, I never went to camp again, and even to one that did close.